Hello friends of Matrixxbrasil channel. Today we have a new interview. My special guest today is Eve. She's a researcher, a hypnotherapist, and a writer. And today we will talk about her last book, The Dark Side of Cupid. Hello Eve, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you too, because we are seeing your work and it's very important to talk about it.
I think so. Definitely. It's definitely a dark side of what happens within people who have had paranormally influenced love relationships. Well, just to give you a recap, I did write a book about 11 years ago as a result of my working with people who've had alien encounters all their lives, what I call multiple abductees. In that first book, I focused on what I thought was really important because I was observing many people in my support group at the time who were having love obsessions or unusual types of love relationships that they felt and they actually knew that their alien handlers, the ones that took them throughout their lives, had set them up with another partner for whatever reasons that I described in my first book.
What's the name of your first book?
The
It's
first book is called The Love Bite,
Love Bite.
Alien Interference in Human Love Relationships. And that's based on many case histories of multiple abductees for the most part. Most of them were multiple abductees. Some of them were people who had the MILAB or the military involvement along with alien encounters, and how they were set up with a love partner by their aliens or whoever was working in their case somehow. And so there was several investigated cases that basically established this is happening, it's real, and I think it's happening to more abductees than is being reported by many of the other researchers. And so I basically focused really on this subject of the relationship interference because what I found in my own work with abductees and support groups and, witnessing, talking to people for years on the phone and counseling with them, that there was a lot of what I call the manipulation and interference in their lives by these aliens who were, visiting them on a regular basis. As not only aliens, but these alleged military humans who were working with aliens or in some kind of project with alien technology.
Oh, cool.
So, to make a long story short, that was the first book that established that yes, your relationship can get set up and orchestrated or even disrupted by these beings. And several of them will say that, well, they tried to get together with the person of their choice, but the aliens kept breaking them up or stopping them from being with the partner they wanted and instead would try to put them together with somebody else. And
And to ruin her lives or their lives. That's
well, yeah,
correct.
they would destroy. It was as if they only wanted them to be together with who they wanted for whatever reasons, and then if they weren't, then they would disrupt the current relationship. But more often than not, what I discovered is if you were really looking for the truth as a quote experiencer or abductee, really, really looking for, what is the truth, trying to get to the bottom of their memories. And then they would be assailed by what I call distractions and disruptions from their awareness process, which appeared to be what I called in the early days, I just called it spiritual warfare or alien distractions.
Okay.
And this could be also as a result of what I call the self-sabotage that can happen with people who have been severely traumatized or under mind control. And that also happens. But with the alien and the military involvement, it was a heavy dose of the distractions and disruptions, which I call outright spiritual warfare. And the reason why I called it spiritual warfare in the first book is because I was visited and attacked by some of the beings who were my clients, right, who were in my group, who
Yeah.
literally warned me to stay away from them and to stop doing what I was doing because they didn't want anybody meddling or interfering with their people and their lives who they wanted for their own purposes.
And
So
these beings, they present to you in physical form.
in Mostly psychic attacks are very, very vivid dreams.
Psychotext.
They would appear in your room at night and then disappear, kind of thing.
Okay.
And then they would appear and then basically send you a telepathic message with a lot of bad vibes to stay away from a certain person. And then they would beam in images in your mind of what would happen to you if you continue the research, which would be a threatening kind of situation, basically threatening me. And this happened early on, years ago, in my work.
And still continue this kind of stuff?
And I continued because I felt that
These beings continue to threat.
Yes, they continue to try different methods and tactics, which I think me as a researcher and as someone who's had experiences, I had to learn how to beef up my own defenses spiritually and emotionally. I had to learn how to really heal my own issues from my own childhood issues, to be emotionally stronger, but also spiritually stronger. So I did a lot of prayer and meditation, and I went on a lot of meditation retreats, learned lucid dreaming and different things that I felt were good to help build my spiritual resilience, because I see that a lot of this is a spiritual war on our consciousness, at least with respect to the beings that I think who have a malevolent agenda with controlling and manipulating and using people like cattle, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
So that was basically the history of why I wrote the first book, and one of the main things that I felt was really important to share in the alien abduction community was that there's blatant spiritual warfare and disruptions going on, and manipulation of not only the abductees during the abduction experience. For example, what people know by looking at these documentaries, right, of, oh, well, the craft and takes you and they pull you on board and they subject you to a medical exam, open the prod, and then they take you home. Well, in reality, people get much more alien interference in their life than what goes on just within the, quote, abduction experience.
Yeah, this kind of the abduction, the physical kind of procedures are just the
one level of interference.
Yeah, sure.
And it's just the overt level of what we could recognize, but there's much more going on, such as testing and training our emotional responses to things, and what we used to call the stage managed dream, where if you get many people together and they start discussing things that have happened in their life, in their dream life, in their relationships, you come to find some patterns that kept happening over and over again. And one of them was what we call the stage managed dream. And it's like your dream life being hacked into. They're more lucid, they're more vivid, and you get a certain feel to them, and you feel as though there's another being or intelligence who's directing the dream and observing your responses, or trying to train you to believe a certain thing, or condition you to, I don't know, to believe or act in a certain way, as if they're testing you. And then some testing did revolve around, let's say, if they wanted to bond you with another targeted love partner, and they would put in scenarios of how they would think you would like this partner to be, to try to tailor make, the bonding partner.
Mm-hmm.
These kinds of things I felt were how they were bonding and manipulating people on different levels, as well as bonding people in childhood. People would have dreams of, wait a minute, I knew this person years ago, and then 20, 30 years later, they meet that abductee, and they know they had mutually shared dreams and experiences when they were children. They were pre-bonded. So that was back basically in the first book. So if I my second book, called The Dark Side of Cupid, what I reported on in this book was something that I feel is more important than just investigating alien abductions. For me, I know it's true. It's already happening. I don't need to reinvent the wheel and talk about the same thing. I wanted to get more involved in what are the dynamics of these relationships that are being interfered with or set up in some way or disrupted. And the pattern that I saw emerging over and over again was, not only as a couple, sometimes they're set up as if there's a magical factor involved that puts these people together with magical synchronicities and omens and deja vu, unlikely coincidences that would happen that seem to throw two people together in a way where they felt it was a divinely arranged match. They felt like this person was
Yeah.
their.
And there is nothing divine about that, right?
It depends. It depends on how does the relationship turn.
Uh,
So in the book, I talk about, let's see, it's a good 12 years later, at least 11 years after the love bite. And so during that time, I would continue to get reports from people who believed that they had what they call a love bite relationship because of unusual symptoms, which I should just give you a list of symptoms. Well, from the
okay.
first book, it was more people who've had alien abductions throughout their life, or they thought they might have, and there were certain symptoms. And in the dark side of Cupid, I give what I call the red flags, and I'm going to pull it up so that the people who reported certain things. Here we go. I'm just going to read you
Okay.
what I call the red flags of a dark side of Cupid case.
Okay.
And people would come to me throughout the years because they had some paranormal interference and a love connection where it was just not right. They needed someone to talk to. They wanted to find out more information, get more insight. So those are the people that would come to me. So I'm just going to read you some of the symptoms so you can tell.
Okay.
And if you can hear me, I'm just going to read them out. Dreams of the partner before meeting them, suggesting a precognitive knowing. That's one of the things. Physical sensations in the solar plexus, genital, gut, or other body areas such as neck, heart, and between the shoulders, which would suggest a psychic linking in, for example, if there was an energy vampirism. Sometimes a part of the body is affected.
Energy. I'm sorry.
Oh, what I call energy vampirism.
Energy vampirism. For the people that don't know. In,
Yeah, and that's actually a big part of the
yeah.
second book because I found out, oh, well, that is one of the main things that happen
Mm-hmm.
even indirectly. And then one of the other things that people will experience, well, we will call it the astral sex visitations, or frequent dreams of sexual contact that
Okay.
has a greater physical sensation than just a dream
Mm-hmm.
with a particular partner. And
And
so
just a little question. When these people have this kind of dreams and this kind of sex dreams, when they wake up, they feel tired, exhausting, or
Sometimes they do. Like one of them in my book definitely had a physical arousal, but to an
okay,
unnatural degree where she did get drained. And in the severe cases, you get very heightened sexual arousal and kundalini energy activation along with being drained, which
yeah.
that suggests that there's much more going on, and that these beings who they can do these things. They could activate this in the other person, and it's not just a simple, sex dream. It's beyond that. So I just
So
wanted.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but so when these beings activate the Kundalini, the people that uh, be like they feel like it's a good thing, right? Because
Yes, I mean it's a strong. Usually the chemistry is really strong
yeah,
with that partner, or you have an unnaturally strong connection with the person, or a psychic connection for not having known them long,
yeah.
or maybe they're not ordinarily your type, but it's like, wow, you sure have a strong connection that doesn't
Hmm.
seem to explain only knowing them for a short period of time, and that's another symptom. And then like
Okay.
obsessive love, there could be an obsession that takes place, or I don't know, infatuation. And then psychic responses or coincidences from either partner, like you receive a phone call or email from your partner the moment you think of them,
Hmm.
or you think about cutting off the connection because it's crazy, and then they call you as if there's some kind of there's a strong psychic linking that goes on.
Okay.
And then the sense of physical or emotional draining is obviously one of the symptoms. And then one partner becomes suddenly switched off emotionally or psychically unplugged. And in my first book, we're able to relate that to an abduction that took place. with one of the partners or both, where the aliens basically told one of the partners that we're not going to be doing this connection anymore, and they basically sever that bond so that when you come back from the abduction, and sometimes people don't remember what happened, they
Mm-hmm.
suddenly have no more feelings for the person, and then it leaves the other person pining away in unrequited love because they've been suddenly psychically disconnected from their partner, but they're still in love with the partner. So that was one of the symptoms that was reported a lot. I call it the switching off. uh,
Okay.
and
And
then another symptom would be your feelings of being watched or being played like puppets in some drama myth. And of course, paranormal activity, what I call the third party entity visits or attacks, psychic attacks, sudden dreams, visions, and thoughts as if they're implanted in your brain.
mm-hmm.
Of course, obsessive thoughts that are not really usual for you or the other partner. So those are the kind of things that would suggest there's something going on. And in the dark side of Cupid, I went on to say that there's also what I call the emotional roller coaster situation, where you may have ecstatic emotional highs and then crashing lows,
Mm-hmm.
or the partner is manipulative, like the psychopathic manipulative partner situation, that where they have a what I call a third party entity, a demon or spirit or a reptilian or an alien acting through them and hosting that person or possessing or overshadowing them, that affects the relationship in a crazy way. It makes it feel like you're being buffeted around on an emotional roller coaster with no control over all these bizarre events that keep happening. And it's almost like in that movie, there was a movie in America called The Adjustment Bureau with Matt Damon and another actress. They're
It's
the
new. This movie, it's
years ago now, a couple years ago.
years. Okay.
Pictures, basically, they showed them as these beings who wore these, fedora hats and suits, who would manipulate the relationship. They basically disrupted the true love because they didn't want the true love couple to be together, and so they, interfered in reality, in and out of time, so that they would
Mm-hmm.
always be each other. So
But do you know why these beings like the reptilians and others make this kind of arrangements, make these love connections?
Oh, the
What
purpose. Well,
is
the
the
main
purpose
purpose
of
that I
that?
talk about in my second book is energy vampirism or psychic vampirism, or feeding off that emotional, sexual soul energy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the primary reason in the darker side of Cupid why they're doing this, especially when, let's say, one of the partners is what I call the psychopathic reptilian host type of human that's overshadowed or heavily
Okay.
possessed by a non-human entity. It's definitely energy vampirism. There's no doubt about it. And there's specific cases in the book. There's at least three that it's definitely beyond a shadow of a doubt. That's what's happening.
Okay, and you say in the book, most of the victims are gifted, are
Oh yeah.
have a lot of light. So
Yes, yes. One of the, well, 100% of the people were people who were interested in like the truth-seeking crowd, people who think outside the box,
mm-hmm.
people who were sensitive, artistic. Many of them were healers or psychics or researchers or whistleblowers. 60% of them were people who believed to have had at least one alien encounter throughout their life. There was at
Okay.
least three Milab abductees in the book, but there was probably more. Nearly 60% have had alien encounters. And I suspect maybe more of them, except maybe they're just not aware.
Okay.
But it's not like, one would think, oh, well, maybe because there's something wrong with the person that they keep getting stuck in these bad relationships. So in
Mm-hmm.
a large part of the book, like any relationship self-help book would go into, well, gee, why am I keep ending up in these kind of relationships? What am I doing wrong?
Mm-hmm.
It's something that people would want to know, like, are they being vulnerable because of unhealed trauma? And so that was one of the vulnerability factors. If you have unhealed trauma, that could leave windows open for you to be targeted by a predatory type of partner. So it's really
Puxa.
good to heal those, heal any wounds. Although in the dark side of Cupid, there was perfectly healthy people who had never had these kind of relationships before who had this a love bite or were targeted by a predatory type of psychopath energy vampire, and they were absolutely, they weren't the typical victim type of person. They were shocked that this could even happen, and some people are literally targeted because of their truth seeking, their whistleblowing, their research, or because they have a lot of light, like certain healers who have a lot of light, and
Yes.
light workers and healers who had one of these kind of relationships, and they were shocked. They were absolutely shocked. So
So the other purpose is to get a little trouble for the people that are trying to think outside the box, like you said, right?
yes, yeah, and so that was one of the things that I put in my book. You know, is this a disruptive effort to put a clamp down on the raising of our consciousness? And are these
Hmm.
ancient beings who are the same ones behind abductions, are they literally trying to keep us dummied down like sheeple because they were easier to control if they could manipulate us? And that
Yes.
once we start raising our consciousness and waking up to who we are and our true power and what they're doing to us, using us as cattle or using us as they're feeding on our soul energy,
Yeah.
then what are we going to do? They may lose their resource, right? So
Hmm.
what do? Is they attack the people who are shedding the most light on the darkness, and it does happen. And Barbara Bartholick and Candy Turner, Dr. Carla Turner, were
Hmm.
examples of people who shed a lot of light on the dark side of alien abductions, and they, in their lives, they had a lot of unfortunate incidents, and I believe were murdered.
Yeah, I see the that Barbara have a car accident,
Yes, she did. And
and
it's a miracle she even survived,
yeah,
although she ultimately did die from complications from a head injury. But unusual things like that happened throughout her career as a hypnotherapist, working with people who've had the alien and UFO encounters.
hmm,
And some cases, there would be what we call the reprisals. And this is something that I noticed early on in my work, and I had never really expected to run into this. In my early years, I thought, oh well,
yeah,
aliens are good, and they're these star people who are going to raise our consciousness, and feel all special about it. But
yeah.
when,
Me too. I think a lot of people in the beginning
yeah,
uh, come to this trap of New Age and Astar Sharan and
yeah,
kinds things like that.
and yeah, I found that to be true. That we need to be more discerning in spiritual deceptions, and a lot
Sure.
is spiritual deception. And so now I'm very skeptical, and I've read up on possessions and exorcisms and different shamanic ways of basically dealing with the same kind of thing,
Hmm.
except through their lens or their cultural understanding of maybe the same kind of situation where there's an interference with a ghost or a spirit or a demon, or somebody gets partially possessed. I think those kind of things are happening with the alien, with the aliens. They're
Yeah.
doing the same kinds of things. They're taking on same kinds of characteristics as many demons do. But
Yeah, and maybe I don't know, but maybe demons are aliens and aliens are demons. It's we don't know where they come from, right?
well, they claim to be from certain places. And in Malanga's work, he talks about how there are beings who come from different universes,
Mm-hmm.
or like an anti-universe, or the second universe from the second creator. And it's kind of complex unless you read his material. But
Yeah.
the essence of it is that there are transdimensional beings who don't belong here, who have come here, and the only way that they could function and exist is as a parasite on our soul energy, because somehow they don't have a soul, or they don't have access to that energy. So they basically have to use us as hosts to continue their life form.
Yeah, or maybe they lost. I don't know. I don't know if you are
Yeah.
used to, but a lot of people say that the Greys come here because they like lost her souls or That's
Well,
why they are so uh,
yeah,
no, right?
yeah. I think that that's true in some way because by Malanga's work, he basically proves it scientifically that they lack this soul component, and that's why they link on to our spirit and mind component within our bioenergy system, and then they link on to use our soul energy, and they use humans as hosts to carry what they call the active alien memory, which is like all the lifetime memories of a particular alien,
Yeah.
and it's empowered by our soul. But if we disconnect that, then we could disconnect the aliens from our life, which is a lot of what Dr. Malanga's work is about. It's learning how they operate. Like the invasion, if
Hmm.
there was an ET invasion scenario, it has already happened and it's happening from the inside. And the
Yeah,
outside
for sure.
is just a dog and pony show. It's just a projection of what has already happened.
Yeah.
In my view, at least with respect to the ones that have been responsible for the abduction phenomena.
Hmm.
So,
I see. I think today or yesterday, in the news about China and United States, like pretending a invasion. I don't know.
I saw that. It was in the Huffington Post.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know if this is a trumped up a situation to get us to want to believe in a ET invasion scenario, or it's going to be politically used to
Yeah.
draw attention towards that. Although in my view, I mean, after having worked with people who've had the abduction phenomena and the what I call the MILAB experience, or they've been involved in a
Hmm.
black project used in a super soldier kind of way, the invasion already happened, and
Yeah.
they basically
For for centuries, I think.
took over. They basically took over elements of secret society and of secret government. And what I think is full on possession or partial possession of the individuals involved in places of power,
Hmm.
in the military, in the government, secret government, so that they're basically possessed people.
Yeah. Can I ask you something? One good question that I always ask for me. I read in the Carla Turner book. I think it was Into the Fringe, but I don't have
Oh yeah.
a sure. Why the military abductions when they get people that it's they asking about the aliens, what the aliens are doing,
Nice.
what why they ask kind of questions about the aliens if
Well,
some say they have some arrangements together.
yes, and from what I understand, the aliens are in charge of the ultimate operation and use humans to help do what they're doing. But
Hmm.
they keep some humans in the dark, which might explain why some military would turn around and interrogate and reabduct after someone just had an alien encounter, and then turn around and interrogate them about what happened and what the aliens were doing
Hmm.
to try to understand. And that has definitely happened. No doubt that they want to know what's going
Yeah.
on because they realize that they've been in the dark, that these aliens who've made a treaty supposedly really weren't telling the whole truth and kept a lot of the military humans in the dark about what they were really doing, like a
Hmm.
Faustian bargain. And I think some realize that it's a bad deal and maybe they don't know how to get out from under it. Uh,
Okay.
it's really complex, though. I mean, I've spoken with some people who've been in these black projects who claim that there's alliances being made and changed daily with military and aliens, and that it's very complex. And there's some who basically are taking orders from aliens, and some others who don't like what's happening and still maintain their own independence. But in my view, I think that if they don't take a look at the spiritual thing that's happening with the hosting situation and the parasitism,
Hmm.
it's just going to be taken over. And I
Yeah.
think it's a spiritual issue. Ultimately, I think this is a spiritual issue, although there's a lot of technology involved and implants and all that,
For sure.
to tell who's
Yeah.
with who. And I just think it's the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, and there's so much compartmentalization that it's hard to know.
Yeah.
Although I believe that, I mean, I know I've seen or I've heard stories where the aliens are playing good cop, bad cop,
Yeah.
and that they throw out all this drama, but it ultimately it appears to be from the same puppet master source.
Mm-hmm.
And in Malanga's work, he seemed to explain things in ways that I would observe these things and always wonder. There's higher levels of beings, like there's several different races of aliens, and then there's
Yeah.
beings who are non-physical who may not have a body, but they're on higher and higher levels of creation or different levels of creation.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you understand the higher and different levels of creation, the game is played differently. And it's not something that I fully understand, although there is a figure that has arisen in Malanga's work, which I actually experienced myself.
Yeah.
Uh, and they call him the primordial man figure, which this being is, he calls it Adam Kadmon in from the Kabbalah literature.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very powerful being who appears to be the father of humanity, and that our souls come from him.
Yeah.
But we keep getting recycled back in this karmic rebirth situation. And in order to be free, we have to actually free ourselves from that primordial man who basically kind of, Malanga makes it sound in one of his articles as if we're being deceived into thinking that he is our God, like this father God. But in reality,
Yes.
he's not the highest level God creator. Um,
Yes. It's just the maybe the physical or dimension.
yeah, and it's complex. He talks about it in
Yeah.
his article called Genesis 1, and he has actually 3 articles. Most of them are in Italian. Only one of them has been translated into English, and I don't know if there's some that have been translated into Brazilian. Some of his work is translated in different languages, so that might be something to look up because it's complex. But
If you have this article in English, I think Matrixxbrasil can translate to Portuguese. Will be
oh,
very cool.
yeah, because that explains, like, the primordial man created the aliens, for example. And so, but it's so complex that I wouldn't even try to describe it. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that once we become free from alien abductions, what some people started noticing, and I noticed this in my own life, that once I deleted alien abductions, like the alien grays, then these other beings would show up. There's this powerful being that I would call the father figure, who is like the primordial man that Malanga describes. And this father figure is much more powerful and would create dramas and do things and basically show himself once you want to get free. Once you make all these efforts to become free, then he shows up on this whole other game plan. And it's like being tested on a whole other level of,
Manipulation, maybe.
like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me to deal with. I mean, I dealt with some issues for several years without even talking to anyone about it. And when I saw Malanga's work, I finally understood that's what it was.
Uh-huh.
And it took me years to just kind of process what was happening. So I can understand why people become confused, and they may look up to certain deities as being their creators or creator gods, but in reality, I believe that our divine essence goes to a much, much higher level
For
of being
sure.
and awareness, and that if we truly want to become free, we have to become free from those creator gods as well.
Yeah.
Not following them like a bunch of sheeple and looking up to them or making sacrifices to them and
Yeah.
oohing and wooing over these star gods. It's like there's no need for that. I think,
Yeah. They're not the gods. If they were, they didn't manipulate us and put this kind of lies all around us. That's why they are not the real gods.
yeah, and there's definitely a dark side
Yeah.
and a light side too. But all I know is I just wanted to gather what I felt was evident in how you can tell if your relationship is being interfered with, and how you could actually identify if that was happening, what that would be like in a relationship. Because in my view, if we really want to solve a problem, let's say of aliens, or we have to solve it on an internal level,
Hmm.
on the internal level in which they've invaded.
Yeah, and I think I don't know, but I think in your last book, The Dark Side of Cupid, you say a lot of things to help people in this
Oh yeah.
case. That's
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah, and this must be at least a third of the book is on healing strategies and what I call what people can do with compassionate communication when you're in a situation as a couple and you want to communicate and be able to nurture the love connection, all the things that you could do to nurture the love connection and to heal whatever unhealed wounds that create problems, and
Hmm.
then how to get rid of the alien interference or the paranormal interference so that you could reconnect and strengthen the love, or that you could get rid of it. So a lot of it is about healing and doing the grieving work, which a lot of people, they don't want to hear about it. But in my view, that's how we strengthen ourselves, how we create what I call spiritual, what's the word? Like your immune system, your spiritual and emotional immune system must be very strong to deflect manipulation by these beings.
Uh-huh.
So
And you getting a lot of progress with this new research that you're making about to prevent, right? And
yes,
to
absolutely. And prevent things is, first you may realize you have something like this in your life and you learn how to recognize it,
hmm
and how to deal with it if it's happening. And if you want to maintain the connection, because usually when you have one of these quote love bite connections, they're really strong, powerful connections, and the love feels real and it feels great. But if there's
hmm
a craziness, then I talk about in the book, well, how you to deal with that craziness so that you could, nurture the love connection and then let the other parts go. Although I believe that being proactive is very helpful, and that's like, well, how to do the paranormal intervention strategies. If you really do have that paranormal intervent what I call it, paranormal viral factor, where there's an entity involved, then
hmm
to find ways to get rid of the entity through any kind of like shamanic healing or exorcism, deliverance, meditation, mindfulness. There's many ways where you could strengthen that so that you could seal up that paranormal boundary. And that's a lot of what the book's about, how to strengthen ourselves proactively. And ultimately, how can we create community based on awareness and based on how we use these new ways of being and communicating, so we develop communities that are resilient and strong from these predatory influences.
hmm
These predatory influences are very, very real.
Yeah, for sure.
And to make sure that if there was an alien invasion, it already took place, and they're working through certain kinds of psychopaths. That's what I think.
Yeah, and I listened someone talk someday, but I don't remember. But he told that the aliens don't will invade us because they want everything here. So that's why we are resource, and the
Yes, resources.
plants and the other things are very precious for them. That's why we never will see it like aliens come here with guns and stuff like that. Because
And if they did,
yeah,
it would be an ultimate. Well, I mean, unless we woke up and then they had to put down the clamps.
yeah,
Um, but I think they would find other ways to do that.
yeah.
You know,
They have even if don't want to, but I think they right now they have the power more or less here in Earth.
yeah. I mean, it's through our ignorance,
Yeah.
and then we need to wake up spiritually, but also be emotionally intelligent. And that was a big part of the book. Was I believe that in our Western culture and the patriarchy, they don't really put a lot of emphasis and value on emotional intelligence and healthy relationships, or relating, compassionate communication, and
Mhm.
that our greatest weakness is devaluing a whole huge aspect of our beingness, which is what I call the divine feminine aspect.
Mhm. for sure.
Devalue it or think it does not have importance, we actually take away our own power by focusing just on science and technology or the hardware of UFO and the craft.
Yeah,
That's just like hobbling around on one leg. You got to use the other leg to be a whole person and to have a whole strategy on how to deal with this. It's our culture has been brainwashed into thinking that the only thing that is valid
it's
is love,
science. Yeah,
science, when there's this whole other aspect of our being which actually has power um, to deal with the aliens. It's like our power comes from our soul
mm-hmm.
and from the intuition of using our soul wisdom and the soul connection. See, that's what gives us the power. We can be as brilliant on an intellectual level, but that will never match the alien intelligence.
Yeah,
So we have to use our soul power and our soul connection and our emotional intelligence and combine it to improve our resilience against these predatory forces so we can, wake up and use our power to have the kind of lives and world that we want. We don't need to be manipulated by these beings.
yeah, for sure. They
Yes.
they 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 are like 1,000 years doing that. So I think now is enough, right?
Yes, and I think it's been going on probably for a lot longer than Roswell.
Yeah,
I
much more.
think
I
it's
think.
more ancient, and that many cultures see this in different ways. I think like shamanic indigenous healers can perceive these things on other levels of reality, but it's probably been going on for a long time, and they may see it a different way. So there's different ways we can work with this.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? Now it's about the Horus Ra Material.
Oh, the Horus Ra. Okay.
Horus Ra. Yes, it's a very good article, and I recommend if someone want to see it. It's in Eve's site. I will
Yes.
put here in the video
Yeah, it's
description.
.com. It's under the My Labs and Reptilians article section.
Hmm.
That article actually was on the Project Avalon thread for many months,
Oh yeah.
and people discussed that along with other things. But the woman who I interviewed, she was very lucid and aware, and she didn't even need hypnotic regressions. She remembered so much consciously,
Hmm.
and we actually used Dr. Malanga's techniques on her, the Simbad and some of the color test on her, to work with deleting the alien intrusion in her life and reconnecting with her soul,
Hmm.
and, and kicking out the what I call the Horus Ra alien parasite, along with some of the other ones that kept trying to re-enter her life and her family's life.
Hmm.
It's a profound case, and it demonstrates a lot, although it's very deep. I mean, it's most people don't even think alien abductions have anything to do with aliens as parasites. They're still stuck on, implants and the medical procedures that are done and some genetic manipulation, and that's all.
Yeah. Most of them just get in there because the science you mentioned earlier, they don't think
Yes.
there is more about it, right?
And yeah, exactly. If that kind of goes back to the ancient Gnostic archons, where the archons, they manipulate the way we think, and they are very patriarchal.
I'm sorry. What is who or what is the
The
archons?
archons. Okay, well, the archons is a notation for high level predatory alien types of intelligence that the ancient Gnostic scholars
Hmm.
and people, I guess, they called them archons, and they were different kinds of beings that were rulers, spiritual rulers over humanity and different realms. And it's most of it was found in the Nag Hammadi library. There's a lot of mention of these kinds of beings. And one of the primary researchers who talks a lot about this now is John Lash.
Hmm.
He's done many articles about the archons and the archontic intrusion and how it's associated with this being called Yalta Baoth. And it's complex myth, but I believe it illustrates what we're seeing with the alien intelligence and the powers in high places, these spiritual powers in high places that are controlling humanity for it seems to be a malevolent purpose.
Yeah.
So
They say that the Archons are like the real boss of reptilians and dark forces. That's right, or
yes, if they're, I think the Archontic one, and I'm not a scholar with the Gnostic literature, but the main
okay.
Archon Yaldabaoth basically was an arrogant god who didn't understand his true origin, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that he was disconnected from a divine aspect, which made him basically a psychopath.
Uh-huh.
So what happens is when you're disconnected from the divine essence of realization of, you know, who you really are, if you have a soul, right?
Oh yeah.
The mind gets more and more psychopathic and separate, and will feed off others in this uh, in a psychopathic way. That's all I could say.
Uh-huh.
It's, there's something wrong with humanity. I think it's just this dark force that has infected humanity's way of thinking, and a lot of that is involved in patriarchy, where
Yeah.
patriarchy only values or overvalues the male aspect, which would be many of the aspects, not just male gender, but science and rationality,
Yeah.
what they call the scientific mind as opposed to the intuitive feminine mind, and all those things, so that people are brainwashed into overvaluing
That's just the reason.
and then undervaluing to the point of minimizing or completely neglecting other aspects that are really, really important to
Yeah.
the human being and to life and reality. So if we think that these things like compassionate communication and relationships and the feminine are unimportant or devalued, then not a wonder why we're a disempowered race. I mean, it would be the perfect way to program a race to destruction and disempowerment by devaluing the divine feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be classic Machiavelli, really.
For
But
sure.
yeah,
And one other question is the Anunnaki. I don't know if you know about, but a lot of people ask me if the Anunnaki are like the reptilians or the Anunnaki are humans like us, and I don't know if you know about it.
yeah, I'm not the expert about that. Um, their history apparently goes way, way back. Although I
Yeah,
do think a lot of it has to do with the reptilians.
yeah,
Although there's so many stories that's not my. I think Alex Collier is the one who would be a better source to explain that history. The Anunnaki and the Enlil and the Inky and the
mm-hmm.
there was another Robert Morning Sky also talked about that in the Terra Papers years ago.
Yeah,
How he understood the history based on his Native American oral teachings,
mm-hmm.
and that ties in with the Americans. I'm not the Americans. I mean the human race, where we came from, and who visited here, and who's engineering us, and it's
Yeah.
very complex. Very complex.
Because maybe I think there is a relation with the Archons, because I read that Carlos Castaneda
Oh
uh,
yes,
wrote
yes,
about the Archons in one of his books
yes.
about the shamans told to what's the figure in the book?
I think well, they called them the predators or the predatory spirits.
Yeah, they say the ultimate shaman secret is
Yeah,
about the Archons.
exactly. The topic of all topics.
Yeah,
And when you start perceiving this reality, it's a real mind blower, and not many people really talk about it, but we certainly observe it. When you know what to look for, you can see it
yeah,
and you feel it, and you could definitely feel it. And what I call the psychopath predator energy vamp type of persons,
mm-hmm.
you can feel that working through them. That would be like the nth degree, I guess, to notice. It's like anti-life.
It's like the uh, antimatter, more or less
Antimatter. Yeah.
antimatter.
Yeah.
That's for sure, because I was reading the Marriott, how to say, the name of this woman from Scandinavia,
Oh, Marit.
Marit
Interview.
Archart, yeah,
Yes.
and they saying about these archons that they are like shapeshifter
Oh, yes.
and
Yes.
like almost like a dark shadow.
Yes, the Horus Ra entity. These are
Yeah.
what Dr. Malanga talks about, the incorporeal entities, which function as is like a dot or a shadow when we're doing hypnotic work and trying to use the liberation techniques. They will show up as these parasites that are almost two-dimensional. They don't necessarily have a body, but sometimes they could use other forms to work through, and they use different alien forms to work through. And then in the Horus Ra article, Marit described how the Draco, who are, I guess, in charge of her case, were basically to use her as a host for this Horus Ra entity. And it appeared to be a higher level incorporeal being that was literally trying to host her and use her as a host for this life form.
But she knows about why they will they want to use her to possess her. Do you know why?
Well, I think because that would make the human a good slave to do what they want. Because when this being hosted her, she did sense that it caused a increase in her psychic abilities even more than she already had. But there was a kind of coldness and arrogance about this being, and that when you feel it, I mean, she knew the difference between feeling that and feeling the pure essence of her soul. And the Horus Ra was very deceptive because it was very intelligent and had psychic abilities, but it had an arrogance about it where it just needs to be known and recognized, like, the egomaniac kind of feel to it. So when you're connected with the pure soul, it's this love and compassion and selflessness and purity, and that this dark spirit. When she talked about the dark spirits, it was as if when they become hosted by this dark archontic energy, one of the things that they seek to do, that they enjoy to destroy purity.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like it's like a demonic thing. They want to destroy the purity of pure souls, and
I saw.
it's just the essence of that type of energy.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's
So
not a good thing.
it's scary because I don't know. I think I see a lot of the egotism in certain new age circles, and people always competing with each other to be on the
Uh,
radio or whatever it is, and that you see a lot of that energy, which to me is it's
yeah,
anti soul.
here in Brazil there's a lot of things like that. I see always like people that can going together to make, I don't know, like workshops and stuff like that, and uh, after one or 2 weeks they are fighting in the internet saying that this the guy is his dark side and the other say no, blah blah blah. It's so strange.
I know there's a
I
lot
see always
of and
like
we see that in the UFO community for many years. And I believe now, after observing it, that a lot of it has to do with the same kinds of alien interference that happens in the relationships. And it will be disruptive and could, move in like a virus to disrupt groups and families and relationships and research. And so it'll turn people against one another. So we really have to have a steadfast dedication to being true,
yeah.
really through to what is the truth and aligning with the purest part of our souls to stay rooted in that connection. And that connection is what gives us the awareness and the power to deflect all the other things that could really complicate and mess things up.
Yeah, it's divide to conquer.
Yes.
Yes,
So,
they love to do that. Divide to conquer. And one last question, Eve, about the abductions and my labs. In your research, in nowadays, this kind of event is continues more and more, or they come a little down right now?
oh, I think
What?
it's more and more. I think the there are some humans who definitely have this technology and is using it regularly,
Yeah.
and a large part of it is human military technology, where they hook you up to some kind of virtual reality equipment and then beam in these training scenarios, and it seems to happen. It's almost as if it's happening more now, or more people are reporting it,
Oh yeah.
and finally, understanding there is a connection here. And there's a large part of that in Malanga's work. He talks about that, and
Mm-hmm.
he says that every abductee has a clone, and that the military are involved pretty much. They know who every abductee is. They have the surveillance technology to be able to know who every abductee is,
Oh yeah.
or maybe they hope to, but that every abductee has a human clone
Ah.
that the aliens use as a backup, so that if the person dies, they can use that clone's backup. So they back up what they call the alien memory implant that's inside that person's brain.
But the people that it's the clone will be with the soul, or
Clone
no?
can be activated by the soul of that person, and usually it's activated temporarily or sometimes for a period of time. Like based on what people have reported, they believe that some clones are actually used on ops, like military ops.
Mm-hmm.
Just like there was a movie, oh, Avatar.
Avatar.
They showed the military, they would go in these chambers, kind of go into a sleep, and their soul would come out and then end up in then one of these alien bodies, and then they
Mm-hmm.
would function in these other bodies. Well, the aliens have the technology to transfer your soul from your regular body into a cloned body,
Oh yeah.
or into an alien body.
Oh, that's not cool.
Yeah, and I have a diagram on my website that was actually drawn by an Italian artist, and
Mm.
it might be in the Horus Ra article, because, or in the one after that, because I talk about the cloning and what
Mm.
was her experience of the cloning and being put in these cylinders that vibrate really, really fast, so that it literally pulls you out of your body astrally, and then you go into this other cylinder where either your clone body is or alien body, and then they'll transfer you for some reason.
Yeah, because I read in some books like the Carla Turner books that a lot of people that was abducted uh, always see the Greys or reptilians using a black box
Yes,
and
yes.
making this kind of thing like making a clone of these people and
Hmm.
transfer his soul to the clone. But
Exactly. Yes, I think they do a black box, and Marie talked about that, how her soul was in the black box and then transferred from the black box into either her clone or something else. And
yeah,
there may be a couple of different ways. And in the Ted Rice story, it was so bizarre at the time it was written. Most people just had no clue. But others have
yeah,
come forward to say, that happened to me, that kind of thing. But it's so traumatizing and it's so unbelievable that most people they just throw it out. They just think it's wild. They won't even believe it. But there is cloning technology that's been going on, and apparently every abductee has a clone if
yeah.
they're being used to store one of the what you call the alien active memory of
But
an alien.
in your view, what's the meaning of transfer the soul of abductee to a clone? It's just for experiment for something in the future, or there is other reason you can see it.
Well, that's something that Malanga talks about in one of his articles. There's a reason for it, where they do this to back up memories, to make sure the memories of the clone is the same as the memories of the original. And there's a certain reason why they do this. And some of it may be military op, using clones like soldiers. So there's different reasons why they may use the clones, or, you know, for medical experimentation also. And that's something that Marit talked about, that she believes that she might even be in a cloned body where they killed her original.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and then you could have several. And it has to take your soul to activate that clone. And one of the interesting things that she had talked about was one of the aliens' strategies, their ultimate goal was to create our human soul was incompatible with alien genetics or alien bodies. So that's why they're trying to do genetic hybridization to create hybrid alien human bodies where the human soul is compatible and can be basically latched into those bodies.
In the aliens' bodies?
Well, yeah, what they want, they need a human soul to keep living. So what they want to do is create alien hybrid bodies, alien human hybrid bodies, whose genetics would be compatible with the human soul, so they could literally entrap the human soul in these hybrid bodies, but then keep the alien human hybrids to be totally parasited and hosted by the aliens. So complete enslavement and complete enslavement of the human soul.
In another level, I think.
Yeah.
In the worst level.
But apparently, I guess not all. This is what goes into the soul business. Not all human bodies had DNA that was compatible with the human soul. And that was one of the reasons why, I don't know if it was Malanga who said this or Marit, that they believe why some people don't have souls, or their souls aren't very connected because the soul frequency was not compatible with their DNA, that there are some human bodies that supposedly aren't compatible, or they're disconnected in some way. So that's a theory. I mean, I can't. That's nothing that I could prove.
Oh, for sure. And I see in the Horus Ra Material too that they say only 50% of people, the population, have souls. And the other one
is less than 50%. I think it was more like 20%, according to Malanga's work. And there is an article translated in English that talks about some of that and how they discovered that through the color test assessment. So, but there are some psychics who are seeing some unusual things, and they're seeing that, you know, either some people don't have souls, or they're just disconnected, or they're taken over by something else, or their energy field is just completely different, and you're just kind of like, what's that, you know? But you know, I don't want to say that, because I'm not a psychic. I don't consider myself a psychic, so I can't tell. But I've had other people report things to me that they see the soulless ones walking around.
Yeah, because there's a lot of psychopath people around here too, so maybe.
Well, I think they're on the rise. I mean, I truly believe they're on the rise.
Yeah.
That there's more and more who are getting taken over, and it sounds like a horror movie, but I do believe that shedding light on this helps us to recognize it, so we could nip it in the bud, so that we can deal with it immediately without it destroying our lives. Because the reason I wrote the book, again, it was to help people, because many of the ones who had come to me were emotionally devastated for many, many years from one of these kinds of love connections, where the connection was, you know, one of these psychopathic types. So this is to protect ourselves, to strengthen ourselves, and to be able to recognize it, so that we don't feed the predator, basically.
For sure.
Back to the archons, you know, don't feed the predator.
Yeah, for sure. And there's something that you want to talk about it, something that you forget, or something that you...
Let's see. Well, just that, you know, the Dark Side of Cupid is a good book to read, to be able to get full flavor of how to recognize whether or not a relationship is being interfered with, and how to recognize a predatory parasite working through someone or working throughout the relationship, so that you can clean it out of your life.
Okay.
and have better harmony and nurture their love and be strong. And to me, it's a healing book. It's a
For sure.
self-help book.
It's to help a lot of people that have this kind of events in
I
their life, I think.
and I think there's more and more people who've had this that
Yeah.
they're just too afraid to talk, or they just don't know what it is. I mostly see in my work or people who've had alien encounters throughout their life or in some kind of project, or they see ghosts. But I believe that this happens to many more people in the world than just abductees, for example.
For sure.
This is global, and I think that if we know what to look for, then we could recognize it and deal with it in a different way. Because standard,
Yeah.
what I was saying in the book, standard counseling methods doesn't cut the mustard when you're dealing with one of these hosted psychopath kinds of people.
Yeah, you need to have the knowledge
Yeah, you
to
need, like,
fight it.
exactly, and this is not just a simple psychological evaluation. I mean, there's people out there in public speaking about, let's say, psychopathology.
Hmm.
People like Thomas Sheridan talking about what he calls puzzling people. And it's basically these psychopath types of people that many now are running into that may be associated with some of these people in high positions of power in the banking families and the Illuminati. You run into some of these basically psychopaths.
And I'm sorry, I will ask you one last questions about the Illuminati and the rituals that they make. Uh, do you have some research or knowledge about the relationship with the aliens and the Illuminati families?
Oh. Well, I don't know if there's statistics on that. I mean, that's something that David Icke would probably have a lot more of that in terms of any
Hmm.
statistics. Although I've had people report that to me who have been in these bloodline families who have, alien and reptilian encounters, and
Uh-huh.
also the non-corporeal parasite beings. And
Okay,
I believe that these secret societies will invoke, and they are under the power and control of these incorporeal beings that work through different alien groups. Well, their souls have been enslaved, in my view,
yeah,
that their souls have been either taken over or compromised. So that's what I believe,
for
based on
sure.
how they behave and what they think they have to do. They might be believing lies just to carry on an agenda that's beyond their comprehension.
Yeah,
Maybe they don't even know what they're really working for.
yeah, maybe. I don't
Yeah,
know. It's strange than fiction, maybe.
truly.
Yeah, and if
To leave on a lighter note, that this can be recognized and dealt with and overcome. And
mhm,
I believe it has to happen on a personal level. And we have to deal with it in our own lives and relationships, and by connecting with our soul to be able to have greater power in our communities and in our world. That it's
for sure,
something that we must take on the inside and work deeply on the inside before we really express that outward.
for sure. And for the people to want to buy your book, they can find the Amazon.
You can find The Dark Side of Cupid. It's on Amazon. It's available as a ebook, Kindle, or a hard copy.
Okay.
And you can also get it through Barnes and Noble, which is another distributor of books in the U.S. mostly.
Mm-hmm.
And through my publisher, keyholepublishing.com. That's Richard Dolan's website. And of
Okay.
course, you can go through my website and just look where I have information on my book. But just Amazon's probably the easiest place you can get it.
Oh, cool.
Easy to remember.
And if someone have some questions or want to talk with you, yeah, they can they can find you in in your site, right?
Yes, I have a Facebook page for my book
Facebook.
under Eve Lorgen, Dark Side of Cupid.
Mm-hmm.
And then, or you could reach me through my website at evelorgen.com or alienlevbite.com. It's the same site. And
Yeah.
then there's a web response form on the contact page. You could just click through that and then send me a message that way.
Okay.
But I would highly recommend Dr. Corrado Malanga's work and his basic theories, which explain a lot in a way that I'm definitely seeing basically the parasitism issue and the energy vampirism issue manifested in certain ways that we could definitely identify. If you read my book, you'll be able to tell all right off.
Cool. Thank you to have here
Well,
in the Matrixxbrasil. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, well,
And
thank you.
we someday in the future we will talk about other things if you want to.
Oh, no problem at all. I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Eve.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.